All right, so this is merely just meant as sort of an intro to ZBrush, just to kind of understand what the hotkeys are and the general interface. I'm not going to go through every single element, but hopefully when you're done with this, you can at least just play around with it, and that's really going to be your best way to sort of learn anyway. So let's get to it. All right, so right off the bat, you're going to open up, and it's going to look something like this. This is what you're going to have, so on and so forth, right? Okay, real quick with the interface, you'll notice that it has its own like icons and stuff for things. So like it won't have Windows ones and it won't have Mac ones up here. Also, where usually it's always file and then like edit and what have you, you can see it's actually alphabetical. Now it is possible to adjust this and like put it the organization that you want. The only reason I'm even mentioning this, because you can see all the things here, is just so that you understand that ZBrush is different. It's different. It does the hard things really well, but it does the simple things oddly. And so one of the simple things to me, not that UI isn't difficult, but it seems like a low hanging fruit to just make things standard. So just be aware that a lot of stuff is sort of it's not going to necessarily be the way that you're used to. Okay, that's what I want to get to. The micro, all the menus here, these are the things that hold all of like the extra stuff. So, and a lot of these, they pop out into more stuff. So, we're not going to use these. We're going to try and use these as little as possible, but just be aware that like I'm going to try and use hotkeys and stuff, but a lot of it can be found up there. But it gets into more advanced things and what have you. Underneath that, you'll see. Oh, actually, it'll probably look like this when you're on it. It'll look like this underneath it. And these are more or less things dealing with what you really like, the brush and what you're dealing with right in front of your face. So you can see like there's draw and these, what kind of sculpting or painting you're doing, the brush size and the sharpness are all up here. You can turn the Lightbox on and off here, or you can see if you hover over, it actually tells you the hotkey. So it's the comma key, or the less than symbol. So if I hit the less than symbol, you can turn that on and off. Lightbox is actually a file browser. That's literally what it is. So you can click on open file and it does the same thing. But what it'll do is it will show you, see I don't have anything in here, but it'll show you if you go to your recents, anything you've been working on, any iteration of it, it will actually be saved right here. So it's kind of nice, but it's a little bit weird. But you can also get to, like if there's a brush or something you want, you can see they have a lot of brushes here, or there's materials and stuff. You can load those through here as well. So it's kind of like a quicker way of having various files and materials just readily available. Okay, so I'm just going to turn that off. On the left here, also sort of things that are kind of an immediacy. So it'll have what your brush that you're currently using with the alpha, what the type of drawing it is, what the alpha is. So think of alpha as the same thing as Photoshop. This is what it's going to basically drag across. You can paint with textures. We're not going to really be using too much of that. This is the material. You can change this at any moment. You can see there's all sorts of different ones. I would highly suggest, for now you can just do red wax. Like that's fine. Red wax looks good. It's good for sculpting. But normally what I do is I try to use the one that's like the ugliest. Because if you can make it look good when it's ugly, it'll look good when you have a nice material. Because some of these just look really cool while you're sculpting. But it doesn't mean it's going to look the way you want. You don't want any materials that are reflective. Typically, I use these basic ones. So usually one of these two, depending. Probably this one's a little bit better because it has the specular, so you'll be able to see your ridges and stuff a little bit better. This is color. You can see it's a little bit, you'll see that this is a little bit weird, but that's what this is for. Then over here, we're not really going to need this too much because we're going to do it all through hotkeys, but these deal things that deal with the viewport here. And then over on the right is sort of like your properties panel. Once we actually model an object, you're going to see that it'll have all these options and it'll be all the things that are associated with it. Inside of ZBrush, they call them tools. Again, this is the kind of thing I'm saying that's kind of weird. All right, so by default, you're going to have this. You can drag. Oh, okay. When you draw something on the canvas like this, they call it the canvas, not the viewport, by the way. Sorry, I forgot about that. They call it the canvas. And the reason why is that if I hold, not spacebar. What is it? Okay, you can hold this and you can actually scroll the document. It treats it like it's a sheet of paper. Okay, I'm gonna get into that a little bit more. So you can see, yay, right? Draws that. To clear the canvas, hit Control N. Is there a hotkey or a button? There might be one. Well, Control N. Just know that's how you do it. Okay. Now you'll see that there are these other things here. So let's just choose sphere. Now, if you don't see sphere here, it should, but you can just click on here, and you'll see the brushes available. So I'm just going to do sphere 3D, and you can see you can click and drag, right? And you can rotate it too. I don't know if you can tell, but click and drag, and it makes these spheres. All right. And there's other ones as well. What ZBrush is doing by default, the way that it was originally built, it was meant as a illustration piece of software, and it did a thing called 2.5D pixels, or just 2.5 pixels, something like that. And normally pixels, right? There's an X and a Y, so they just, there's up, a height and width. What they did is they added depth. So the idea is that this is actually still a flat image. But they have it in a way that there's a depth also being placed on it. So you could use it in order to like draw and like paint reliefs, and you could like change lighting and stuff. It had a really neat effect. Subsequently, they ended up adding 3D ended up becoming more of the primary goal of it, because the reason why they even call these tools is because you're using 3D objects to kind of draw or paint with. Well, you want to be able to have different brushes and stuff, so they made it so you could make different tools, but then subsequently tools just end up being what people actually are creating, and then they export those out to make models. So I'm just gonna, you can click and drag wherever, hit Control N to clear the canvas. Let's go ahead and actually do this. So I'm still on this sphere 3D, just click and drag, draw one, okay? And now in order to go into edit mode, where you're actually going to sculpt it, you can either click up here or you hit T. Okay, now you're going to see you're in 3D mode. You can see it added these things up here. I don't really like this. I got to turn that off. And if I click not on it, you can see you can rotate around this object. Okay. Now, if I want to go back out of this, I can hit T again. Let's go ahead and switch. And now you're going to notice that we're drawing more again. Okay. Now, if I hit T again, it's going to go back into edit mode, but you're going to see these are going to remain, and only the last one is actually going to be 3D. It's kind of weird, right? So I'm going to hit T to back out again. I'm just going to hit Control N. All right. And now I'm just going to draw another one again. And I'll hit T to go back into edit mode. For the most part, you're just going to go in edit mode. You're just going to stay there. But if for some reason you need to get rid of it, you just want to back out by hitting T again or hitting the edit mode, and then just clearing the canvas with Control N. That's really the only value I find it at this point. Nobody really draws in there. Anyway, so now we have a 3D model. We can start doing things to it. Okay. So on the top here, you'll see draw, move, scale, rotate. And these are just like in Maya or Unity or really any other program other than Blender. And it's QWER. So W, E, and R. Okay. The only difference is that they made R rotate, which does make more sense, to be honest. So I'm not mad at them about that. But usually E is rotate and R is scale. But you get the idea. Okay. And then Q is draw. Draw means you're brushing on it and you're drawing it. And then these are the stuff. But you don't really even need to do that, because you see it has this manipulator. You can do it all there. But just be aware that's what they are. You're really not going to need this move, scale, and rotate, at least not to start with very much. But just be aware that those are there. Okay. The next items that you see are these over here. And so you'll see paint with alpha, mRGB, RGB, and M. So basically you can paint colors and materials onto the object. We aren't really going to need to deal with that yet, because we're just going to do sculpting. You'll see Z add and Z sub. Z being depth, which means if you're doing Z add, you're adding depth to it, so you'd be sculpting. Z sub means it will go inwards. You're not going to need to click these buttons. There's also Z intensity, that's the strength of it, focal shift, and draw size. So the easy way to do this is if you hold spacebar, you have all of these, all of the most pertinent things are right here. You can also hold S for draw size, and I think it's U for intensity. And those are the two main ones that you need. But I find that those are kind of hard to hit, because they're kind of like, they're weirdly spaced. I usually just hold spacebar and just grab and click and drag these in order to change my brush size and stuff real quickly. It's not my favorite way of working, but just so you know, that's what it is. But that's what these are, but you can do them all through hotkeys, so we're just going to use hotkeys for that. Not really super pertinent. Now notice that when this is up, you can see that now we have all of these other options. And these are all things dealing with this tool / model, okay? You'll notice I cannot sculpt on it, blah, 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 right? But it actually tells you what to do. Make Polymesh 3D. So, because right now it is a tool, like it's not something we can adjust. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this, you just click up here, make Polymesh 3D, and now it's a sculptable model, okay? So I'm just going to hold spacebar. I'm going to click and drag my brush size. And then focal shift, you'll see is the tightness. So watch, if I go this way, you'll see it gets very broad. So watch when I draw. See how it's very broad? Now if I go the other way, just so you understand what it is, see how it's more towards the center? And if you go in the middle, it's somewhat in the middle. Think of it kind of like fall off. It's a little bit different than fall off technically. All right, so yeah, we can sculpt on it. That's great. All right. Now, to navigate this viewport, to move around in 3D, this is a little bit weird and a little bit different, but I'm going to show you how to do it. To rotate, you just click and drag. That's it. Pretty straightforward. Not on the model. On the model draws. Probably already noticed that, okay? To pan, to strafe the computer, you hold Alt, click, and drag. Okay? Not too bad so far. Now this is where it's weird. They don't have a scroll wheel, so you can't scroll in and out through the scroll wheel. I don't know why they took that out, because it seems like that could be useful, but it does work in here. Usually you just click and drag. Okay, to zoom in and out, Alt, click and drag, like you're gonna like move it. Let go of Alt, but keep your mouse button down. All right, so it's Alt, click, let go of Alt, but keep dragging. Don't let go of the button. That is zoom in and out. Now you might be thinking, oh, that's a really dumb navigation style. Why don't they just do the Alt, middle, left? This is actually, as much as I don't like some of the other layout of things, this actually to me, and it is difficult, you will get used to it, does make sense. The reason why they built it this way is because the idea is that you would be using a Wacom tablet or a drawing tablet of some sort. So for you, if you have a drawing tablet, you absolutely want to use that. Even if it's difficult for you, just use it. You'll be better off. Okay, or if you have a Cintiq, that's even better, or a monitor you can draw on. That way, if it was Alt, left, middle, right mouse button, you would have to push the little buttons on your pen. And some tablets don't even have that as an option. They literally only have the one thing, or they only have one button, so you wouldn't even be able to navigate. By making it just click, you can literally just hold the button. You can do all the navigation just from clicking. It doesn't require the middle or right mouse button. So you can just use the pen or the tablet pen as it's meant to be used without having to like move and try to touch buttons and do weird things. It actually does make sense. It's pretty fast once you get used to it. Totally is fine. Not a big deal. The only difficulty is going back and forth from like whatever your primary app. Like if you're in like, Blender or something, you got to switch from holding shift and middle and you know what I mean? But it is what it is. So that's the way that it is. So that's how you navigate. Try doing that just for a little while so you get a feeling for it. And just play around with that. Okay. And you can pause the video and then when you come back, we'll do it. You can see here what your navigation is to. Always keep an eye on that. So if I hold shift, you'll see it'll snap as I'm rotating. You hold shift and it will snap to the corresponding position. You can also click on these, which is kind of cool for your views. So these are obviously representing the axes, like the world's axis position. All right. So that's kind of neat. All right. So let's go like that. All right. So let's see. That's how you navigate. All right. So the next thing we're going to do is let's do a little bit of sculpting just for fun. And then that'll probably be good enough. So I want to get rid of this because we just made an ugly thing. So I'm going to hit T. I'll hit switch. I'll probably turn that off. And then I'm going to hit Control N to get rid of it. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on a new sphere. Don't click on this one because you'll just draw out your ugly thing again. We don't want that. So click on the sphere 3D or you can click on this and you'll notice that your stuff will show up here. So like I had one earlier that I did. Anyway, so I'm going to click on that. I'm going to drag a new one. Okay. If you hold shift, you'll notice it'll keep it at like, I think 45-degree increments. Then I'm going to hit T for edit or you can click this. All right. Then we got to make polymesh 3D. Click up make polymesh 3D. Okay. Now it's ready for sculpting. One of the things I want to do is I want this to be symmetrical. Notice when I sculpt on one side, it doesn't show up in the other. There's a hotkey. You can just hit X. And now you'll see it'll go on the other side. Where that's actually located is, and I don't know why, this is a weird spot for it. If you go to transform, you'll see activate symmetry and then X. You can do Y and Z as well. They also have radial symmetry, which is kind of neat. So like, you can't see it too much here, but you'll see it like, right? It's kind of cool, but it's not super helpful right now. Anyway, so yeah, That's what that is. So let's get this to the front. Good. Okay. All right, so we got that going. So that was X. Some other things, just for good housekeeping, this may or may not be helpful to you. If you click on this, it'll give you perspective, meaning that it will have distortion. There'll be foreshortening. If you don't have this on, it's going to be orthographic, which means it's going to be absolutely flat. I suggest putting this on because it'll look more natural, at least when you're starting. You can also put on the floor if that helps you, especially if you're like old school 3D. You can see a little bit of blue, a little bit red, so I can kind of tell where it is. But now that we have this, it's not as necessary, so I'm going to turn that off. The other thing I want to do is this. Right now, it's using, I think they call it trackball navigation, which means that it is possible to rotate this to its like side. See if I can get it to do it. Basically, you can make it. You can roll the camera, which is not normally how people model. And if you've been in any other program, that is not the way that it works when you're in the camera. I want you to click on this button because this is going to make it rotate on the y-axis. And this is just called like turntable. And what you're going to notice is now when I go to rotate, it always, no matter what, will try to keep, you can tell up here, just look at this. No matter what, that's going to try and keep the top at the top. So it's sort of, basically it makes it so that the top of your camera is always trying to aim towards the sky. And it just makes it easier so you don't accidentally roll it some weird way. This is supposed to be superior, but I find it difficult to navigate. So I'm going to tell you to turn that off. The other thing you do is hit frame. That will frame it. If you get like stuck or he's like gets in a weird position, you can also hit F to frame, which is fine. Some other things that might be useful is if you hit Shift F, this will give you the poly frame. Basically just shows you the wireframe, which may or may not be useful. It won't be really useful to us right now. Yeah, so that's good. The next thing I'm going to do is this. We're going to put on this Sculptris mode. And what this is going to do is that before, when this was off, you'll notice is if I make my brush a little bit smaller, if I sculpt, it can only get so much resolution, right? It's just using the geometry that's there. But if I use this mode, oh, it looks great, right? What it's doing is it's dynamically tessellating the model and it's creating geometry as we go. Okay, so it's just to kind of, just because that way we don't have to worry about it getting weird for us. Okay, so we're going to put that mode on. So I'm just going to Control Z, just Control Z or Command Z if you're on a Mac, the typical undo, redo kind of button scenario. All right, now I just want to cover the brush situation real quick. So to draw on, you already know, you click, right? To cut in, so this is addition. To do subtraction, you hold you hold Alt, and that will go inwards, okay? So basically, whatever the tool is, in this case, this is just a typical standard brush, it will add or subtract. If I hold Shift, that's smooth, okay? Whatever tool you're on, the Alt will do the opposite of what the tool is. So if it's something where it's supposed to pinch, if you hold Alt, it will spread. If that makes sense. So in this case, it's cutting in as opposed to out, which is more often what it's going to do because most of them are adding things. Okay, typically that's what it's going to do. And then Shift is just smooth, and it's smooth no matter what you're on. Now the last thing that I really want to cover is what I did on accident was Control. This is mask. So if you hold Control and draw, it does this. And it doesn't look like it's doing anything, but what it's actually doing is, make this a little bigger, is it's making it so you cannot brush on that area. So basically you're just masking out that area, and it's super handy to if you're trying to paint something or you want something to stay back, and you can see how you could use it, okay? Which is great. To clear it, to invert it, let's undo that real quick. To invert it, you hold Control and let's just do clear. To clear it, hold Control, click and drag a little box, and that will clear out the mask. You can also do this and it will mask like that, which is kind of weird, but so that's how you clear it out. Now let's say I want to only affect a little area and I want everything else masked. What I could do is, gotta hold Control. I can mask that area. I can invert the mask by holding Control and just tapping. Just click. And now that's the only area that's going to be affected. So you can see how this could be kind of useful, like if you're trying to, get some details or you want to try to work on a specific area. All right. And then I would just hold Control, click and drag. And that's how you do it. You can even start with, I could hold Control, tap, everything's masked. Now, if I hold Control and Alt, remember Alt does the opposite, it will remove the mask in an area, and then I can sculpt on the area. Okay? So, yeah, those things. All right. I'm just going to hold Control, clear, and drag. Now, there's also Control and Shift, and that is for visibility. So if you end up doing that, that's fine. This is one of the things that annoys me. So you would think, oh, Control, click, and drag will clear it. It will not. It's actually going to invert it. Right? That's stupid. To clear it, it's Control and Shift, and you tap. Why wouldn't you make it the same as the other one? I don't know. I don't have I think that's just absolutely ridiculous. They're not even maintaining their own weirdness. So anyway, that's what that is. I don't really use this that much, to be honest. I don't find it super useful. But you might accidentally do it, and just know that this is visibility. Okay. So notice too, when I hold Control, it's actually changing these settings. Okay. Control and Shift, changing the settings. All right. So if I hold Alt, oh, it's not showing it up there, but it is doing subtraction. Oh, well, I thought it would do it. Okay. So it's actually changing the brush. So to change the brush, we've just been using this one. You can click on it, and you'll see, click on it, and you see all of these brushes. There's a lot of them. There's a whole lot of brushes. Most of them you don't even need. Like, they're very, like, spaceship brush. It's not really something I'm super going to be needing, right? Most of them are not super handy. What I would say is some of them are, and you'll know. Literally, I use probably like 3 or 4, and that's it. The rest of them can whatever with themselves, okay? So you might be going, oh, okay, I'm looking for something that does a specific thing. And you can look through. So, for instance, one that's really helpful is, click back on there, is Move, right? Move is good. Move Elastic. Move's fine. There's also Standard Brush. So you'll notice that, like everything else, this is one time where it is useful. It's alphabetical. So if I'm looking for, let's say, Standard, I just got to look for S, and then here's Smooth. So Standard, helps if you say zub zub. Oh, we're already on it, right? So that one's useful. I also like Clay Brush, Clay Buildup. That's also useful, just for layout. This chisel can be kind of good. So here's the thing, though. This is where, so it might be hard though to click on that, and you got to click on. If you hit B, it brings up the brush menu, right? Which that's not really that much helpful. But then let's say I wanted to use the Move brush. If I hit M, it's going to bring me all the ones that start with M, and then you can see now they have subsequent ones. So now I could hit M, and now I can hit V, and now I've got that Move brush. So once you know, like, oh, I always use this one for something, I could go B, S, T. That's the Standard brush. I already knew that's what it was, and I could go B, C, H for chisel, and that will do the chisel brush, right? So once you know what they are, you can just go boom, 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 and you're not even looking at it. You just know that combination equates to, that thing. All right. So I'm gonna call that good. Hopefully that's enough. You should just be able to, so B, S, T. You should be able to just play around with it. I just want you to get an idea of, how it works. The main thing really is to try and get used to this weird navigation thing. That's probably where you're gonna have the hardest time with. And if you get stuck, just start over. Just hit T or hit that edit button, switch, and then Control N, and then draw again. But you're gonna have to choose another object here. You can start with different ones too. Like, they have other stuff. All right. So that's what I want you to do. Go ahead and play around with that. Hopefully, you get a feeling, and it's a good feeling. All right. Good luck.